What if you turned on the news and got as many ideas as you do reasons for exasperation? What if you saw people collaborating and cooperating and shifting power in all sorts of ways we're usually told are impossible? Well, that's what the Laura Flanders Show is all about. We set out to bring you reporting not on somebody's pipe dream of how things could be, but on real work that is happening right now and shifting power across this country and the world. We don't receive money from corporations or governments. We're backed by you, our listeners and supporters. So pony up some support today at lauraflanders.org. Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, the TV and radio program that seeks to raise radical spirits by interviewing forward-thinking people with real-life models of shifting power from the few to the many in the worlds of arts, entrepreneurship, and governance. This week, reinventing and re-enchanting the world. Who gets a say in designing where they live, and what if more of us had a chance? We speak to scholars Silvia Federici and Peter Linebaugh about the promises of commoning for our environment and our social health. But first, we visit with Mary Miss, a Guggenheim Fellow and celebrated artist, whose organization, the City is Living Laboratory, is empowering regular people to create not the cliche of the sustainable city, but living and breathing cities of sustenance, she says. This is the Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. Welcome.
How could the artist's imagination help make issues more accessible to people? To recognize artists as not just the icing on the cake, the thing that is always disposed of first, but really essential members of a conversation.
Mary, we're connecting with you here in your studio in Tribeca. When did you move in here?
I moved in 1970. I lived around the corner in an old herring factory. When we moved in down here, there were spice and coffee and cheese companies all over. There was a butter company across the street. There were cheese fumes not always nicely coming in our back window.
It's completely transformed around here. Do you feel like you had any say in that?
No, I did not have any say. I do not know where I live anymore. I can't get down the street because there are so many baby carriages. It's a totally different place.
Were you always driven by this sense of how do you reconnect a people to its place? Was that a driving influence for you?
It was really important, and I think that's what ended up separating me and my work early on from the land artists, because they were willing to go out in the desert and build something. And what really interested me was more about what a person experiences and how you engage people with places and structures and their own environment. We call ourselves a laboratory, City is Living Laboratory, because we're interested in testing how you engage people. So that's what got us out walking the corridor of Broadway.
5.5 million people per day ride the subway. It's the largest shared urban infrastructure.
This is Red Square. It's an apartment building that was built at the fall of communism.
The estimate's 1 to 10 birds per die a year per building. And there's about 1 million buildings in New York City.
We started doing walks with artists and scientists. We've done almost 50 of these, so we've really been investigating the whole corridor. But now our attention is really focusing on Van Cortlandt Park, starting at Van Cortlandt Park and going down to the Harlem River. This is really an interesting project. Every time it rains, even a little bit, all along Broadway, the basements flood, people's businesses flood. And part of that is happening because there's a brook called Tippett's Brook that comes into Van Cortlandt Lake. It's from a watershed that goes up into Westchester County. And in the early teens of the 20th century, the water was put into the Broadway sewer. So the sewer line goes under Broadway, cuts across, so it ends up going in as sewage into the Harlem River. And it's one of the worst polluters of the Harlem River. So people have talked for a long time about how it might be possible to daylight Tibbetts Brook, and that means letting it see the light of day, taking it out of the sewer.
So the Friends are a nonprofit organization that does environmental education and stewardship programs in Van Cortlandt Park.
Christina Taylor, Executive Director, Friends of Van Cortlandt Park.
The Friends and other groups have been talking about daylighting Tibbetts Brook for a while, and we have a coalition. For me personally, it was looking at where the brook goes into the sewer and kind of questioning, like, wait, where does this water go? And why is this clean water going into the city sewer system? You don't think about what happens when I take a shower, what happens when I flush a toilet to that water. You just know the city takes care of it and all's good on your end. But unfortunately, the city's not taking care of all of it. Parks Department has been on board with daylighting for many, many years now. We are slowly getting DEP to be on board. And the main issue for them has always been, well, the city doesn't own the property, so it probably can't happen. But the solutions that they've come up for dealing with this are absolutely horrible. They're horrendous. It's like, oh, we'll just build these huge catch basins at the northern end of the park and they can hold the water. And it's like, well, no, those are forest. You're not going to take down our trees and just put in concrete basins to hold water. That's not a good solution. Oh, we'll change the level of the lake. We'll decrease the depth of the lake. Well, then you're opening up all the shorelines for Phragmites and other invasives. Not a good solution. You need to come up with a good solution. And daylighting is the only good solution for the environment as a whole.
So we don't have to feel limited when we imagine what the daylighting of Tibbetts Creek can be, because we know they may have built it over the river. It doesn't mean it can't reemerge.
As a city, as a living lab, has been really great as far as getting the word out about the project, getting more people informed. We have our limited reach, and our focus has really been on the environmental aspects of it. The more people that are aware of it, it will help raise it to a level of priority for the city to do. Then we can show that more people support it, and this is what everybody wants.
The impulse behind this came out of my decades of working in the public realm, because that's where all my work has been done. But it's really difficult to have access. And I wanted to try to imagine a way that artists would be recognized as being able to have an essential complementary role at the table when issues come up in the city.
And what difference do artists make in those conversations?
I think it's really about the kind of emotional, sensual, psychological aspects of art that give people something to relate to. I'm imagining that this corridor of Broadway that I'm looking at now and have been for a number of years, that in another 20 or 30 years it could be really transformed. This could become the corridor that looks at different social structures, different ecological structures, where it's this rich environment instead of one that's just kind of a drain on the people who live nearby. In their busy lives, where all of us are just running all the time, how do you begin to let their lives echo around them?
For people that have come to New York, they might be familiar with one of the pieces that really has changed our landscape, and that's down in Battery Park, South Cove. Can you tell us what your project was, what the idea was, what was the problem you were trying to solve there?
Oh, the problem was that I'd been living in this neighborhood by the river since 1970, and we couldn't get to the river. So I wanted to do something that would really give people the water, that you would hear it, that you would smell it, that you would get down close to it. So we, made it so that the walkway ramps down, that there's a visual connection between the land and the water, because I had these pilings put in that are reminiscent in a way of the old pilings that used to be there. We did this planting of what you might have found along the edge of the river at an earlier period. Since it's nearby, I go regularly, and I get to see the change of seasons there, and I get to see the way people interact with it. It's not to say, oh, look at this, look at me, I'm influencing everything. It's more to say, yes, artists can really have an important role, which is the thing that got me to start Cynthia's Living Lab.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. That was Mary Miss, founder and artistic director of City as Living Laboratory. To take a look at the Van Cortlandt Park project in the Bronx, watch this episode by logging on to our website, www.lauraflanders.org. While you're there, sign up for our e-newsletter and our podcast if you're not already subscribed. It's free, and subscribers receive additional audio, including my commentaries, The F Word. In the latest, I ask, we have Women's History and Black History Month. Is it time for a Socialist History Month? Next, I speak to scholars Silvia Federici and Peter Linebaugh about the promises of commoning. Here's Harvest for the World, an Isley Brothers classic reworked by Groove Junkies and Real Soul, featuring Nichelle Monroe, released on Morehouse Records. Community has to be intended, not as a gated reality, a grouping of people joined by exclusive interests and separating them from others, but rather as a quality of relations, a principle of cooperation and of responsibility to each other and the health of the forests, the seas, the animals. So writes Silvia Federici. But how can we get there from here? The practice of commoning and the idea that we might hold and manage land and assets together in common holds a lot of appeal these days. To help us think forward, as we do on the show, we have two world-renowned experts on commoning in the house. Silvia Federici's latest books are Witches, Witch Hunting and Women, and Re-Enchanting the World, Feminism and the Politics of the Commons. Its foreword is written by historian and Laura Flanders Show favorite, Peter Linebaugh, who is the author of, among other classics, the Magna Carta Manifesto. I am overjoyed and feel tremendously lucky to have the two of you together in studio. Let's talk about the role of the commons in American history. I spent some time during the election season in Appalachia and heard a lot about the Appalachian commons, about which I knew very little. It is often told, the story of the commons, as if it was in just medieval England, but that's not the case. Peter, you've looked at this history. What's American about it?
Yeah, what's American about it is, unlike Europe, American capitalism is born in destruction of the commons. In Europe, we used to be taught European capitalism was born on the destruction of feudalism. Actually, as we go further, we see that this destruction of the commons is all over. But in Appalachia in particular, this has been a zone of freedom, and the latest to be privatized, with the mountaintop removals, the destructions of mountains, the pollutions of rivers, has produced the opposite in ideological terms. That is, this was the zone that elected JFK, if you remember, in 1960, the Kennedy. This was where poverty was discovered. What's actually happening in Appalachia are communities over many generations that have been multi-ethnic, have been Native American, been African American, been runaway slaves. It's freedom land. It's no accident that John Brown centered the struggle for abolition in Appalachia, in the mountains.
But now it's the land of monoculture, huge landowners, coal mining companies that have very little concern for the community or the planet. Jump to here, we've got an urban tradition of commoning here in the United States too. What does that look like to you, and how do we bring this picture together as something alive today?
Well, I think what is alive today is that more and more people are being displaced. They're being displaced from rural areas, they're being displaced from the mountains that have been destroyed. But at the same time, to the extent that they have been forced to urbanize, they also bring to the urban space, right, the need to reconstitute a community. And we have seen it in the United States, I think, in the last 3-4 decades in particular, and also thanks to immigrant people, who come from the south of the continent, where you still have strong communitarian relation, you still have strong indigenous, group, population, nation who have a lot of communal territory still. And so we have seen, for example, the phenomenon of the urban garden, agricultural farming, which are much more, than sources of, food, and they've really become centers of sociality and also places where for new production of knowledge, like children from school can go there and see how, vegetables are grown. And so they're fulfilling now many different functions.
So this is urban gardens are part of the re-enchanting of the title of your book.
Very much so.
Re-enchanting, give us some background. You mentioned it in the foreword, what that word, that phrase is about.
Yeah, it comes from French for chanter, meaning to sing. So to enchant is an action of joy, and it's an action of hope, of the imagination. That's enchantment. It's not just for Halloween or for a senior prom. It's not just
You're not just to sell albums.
Not just to sell albums. No, it's to reconceive of what we are on the planet. Our planet is not real estate. Our planet is not a jail to throw people off of. It's not a wilderness. It can be a home. And as Silvia just said in this great book, Re-Enchanting the World, we have to make a home with one another and practice principles of reciprocity, redistribution, obligation, and respect. To enchant is to sing into community once again.
So what has feminism got to do with all of this, Silvia?
I think a lot, because I think today women are really on the front line in terms of recreating commons. And in particular, one of the things that have been happening is the commoning of reproductive activities. And I just came back from a 40-day trip through Latin America, and that's a place where you can really see it in the most intense form. I visited a number of what they call villa miserias. These are encampments that people displaced from rural area have created in urban territory, in the periphery, and they've all been built by people's hands. So when I'm saying reproduction, for example, I've been in communities where now women are doing a lot of reconstruction of the day-to-day activities that are producing people's life, with the popular kitchen, collective kitchen, urban gardens, also organizing network of activities in a cooperative way. For example, I was in a place called Villa 2124 in Buenos Aires, where amazingly women are organizing to take care of bringing the children to school, bringing them back to school, because they're afraid they may be run over by a car, where they take care, the state is totally absent. So they take care of the garbage. They take care of making sure that people have some food if they're extremely poor.
So how do we
there's
not
a whole network.
But how do we not fall, Silvia, into the trap of having women do the same old traditional low-paid, low-respected work?
Okay, you may say that. On the other hand, what is happening, so it's not an attempt to replace the state, but it's a way of providing for the most immediate need in a cooperative way, but in the process, also something new is being created. New forms of solidarity are being created. New ways of imagining how reproduction could be organized. And because of the solidarity that is generated, women are also gaining the power to confront the state, to negotiate with a different level of power.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. My guests are world-renowned commoning experts, scholars Silvia Federici and Peter Linebaugh. So how does this change Marxism, Peter?
So the commons is not only a place of redistribution and of resources, it's also a place of resistance. This is the lesson of Standing Rock, just thinking of North America. And the kitchens in Standing Rock, the care of the children, the care of the elderly, those who provided clothes, those who enchanted the land with their notions of its sacredness and the purity of the water protectors, were led by women, young women. A new generation.
So there's new leadership and there's perhaps new appreciation, new valuing of certain kinds of work. Is there also a shift in our sites of struggle? 100 years ago, 200 years ago was the factory floor. The physical production of stuff was the place of struggle. Now many of us work nowhere near a factory floor, and these issues of our lives seem to me increasingly the places of our struggle.
Absolutely. This is where, in fact, most of the feminist and particularly, more generally, women's activity is now, engaging the reconstitution of the social fabric. With centering on the reorganization of reproduction in a way that does not isolate us any longer.
I was just thinking of Michelle Obama and her gardens. I mean, this is a signal. She is responding to needs that are being felt all over the world. Water and food, and then housing. We have to find ways of working with one another, not to replace the state or instead of the state. The commons is neither the market nor the state. It's a way of survival, and it's a way of renewing forms of cooperation, forms of value, with our differences of sex, race, gender.
Because it requires us to talk to one another, among other things.
Occupy did.
Yeah.
Standing Rock does.
I'm also looking at what's happening in Argentina, what's happening in Brazil, what's happening in this country. And we're seeing the rejection of all things common, the increasing isolation and clinging to private industry, the begging of Amazon, please, please, please come, we'll give you public money. So what's happening here? It's not all not everyone's as impressed as we are, perhaps.
But my view is that this move to the right, and it's very much a response to also the level and intensity of struggle that people are making. Again, when you look in particular to the South American continent, you see that there is almost no place where people are not fighting to defend what they have, to defend their territory, to defend their land. And I think the move to the Bolsonaros, the Macri, are really a response to that. And right now also, you have a new women's movement, a new very, very powerful women's movement, which is in the street not only for the struggle over abortion or against violence against women, but more and more, moving around, mobilizing around the broader program that connects violence against women to the politics of extractivism, to the destruction by mining company of the land and the waters, and who sees very much the question of producing new commons, rebuilding the commons.
I was thinking you don't need just to go to Latin America, though here in New York, one thinks of the Longhouse and the Haudenosaunee people as a source of inspiration. These are the people who built New York, after all, the Mohawk high iron folks. But I was also thinking of the so-called birthplace of democracy in Greece, and the Greek commoning has been on the forefront, the edge of the massacres of our basis of reproduction, of health, of education, of housing, with the neoliberal onslaught that paved the way for Trump, that paved the way for the rise of fascist creatures in the halls of power.
What would you say that we should keep our eyes on? What are you watching as you look at the landscape out there for green shoots, for bright sparks, for commoning?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, the young people especially. That's what I look to. And I see new attitudes, no longer formed by the Cold War, but formed by these experiences, which to you and me may seem new, but to them are natural. Again, Occupy, Standing Rock, the Zapatistas. These are places where attempts have been made and defeats have occurred. But with defeat, the memory keepers keep it alive.
I'll ask you the same question, Silvia, but I will throw out the thought that I didn't mention at the beginning, which is we've just seen a midterm election where it seemed to me ironic that you have kind of the bastion of capital, the U.S. electoral system, running its operations off an incredible project of commoning with people in the election campaigns that I saw all across this country working together, sharing resources, sharing lists, sharing information, giving car rides, helping people to the polls. It's not your typical commoning project, but it is one of a kind, isn't it?
But I think it's an understanding. It's the understanding I was referring to, and Peter was referring to, that commoning is not only a reorganization of the production, it's also the building of a ground of resistance. Yeah. Without, every struggle, every form of mobilization, requires its own forms of reproduction that sustains it. And the coming together of people, building new ties of solidarity. This is what gives continuity to a struggle. This is what allows it to really intensify.
You've been listening to Silvia Federici and Peter Linebaugh, and earlier in the show, celebrated artist Mary Miss of the City as Living Laboratory. For more information on all of this week's guests and more on commoning and the many issues that intersect, go to www.lauraflanders.org. That's where you can watch this week's show and explore our archives. While you're there, become a member by making a one-time donation or become a sustaining member for as little as $2 a month. Think of it as dropping 50 cents into the virtual hat every week. Again, that's www.lauraflanders.org/donate. Next week, technologist Doug Rushkoff and others join me to discuss the onslaught of not very human technology we're suffering. The new digital age poses threat as well as boon, but we can push for the boon if we work at it. That's next week on The Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. Join us. The Laura Flanders Show is made possible from the Novo, Ford, Tomcat, Cloud Mountain, and Fonda Foundations, as well as by listeners like you. So thank you. This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, with Monica Mohapatra, Charlotte Carpenter, Nat Needham, Natasha Gaspar, Jeannie Hopper, Joanna Pinto, and Dominic Marcella. Stay kind, stay curious. Until the next time, I'm Laura.